Have you ever seriously asked yourself what it takes to do great work? Not just good work, but something truly groundbreaking. Well, in this explainer, we're going to jump into an essay that really tried to find the universal principles for achieving incredible things no matter what you do.
So let's just put the question right out there. How do you do great work? And I don't mean, competent work or work that gets the job done. I'm talking about the kind of work that pushes boundaries and expands our whole idea of what's even possible. Okay, so the first thing that pops into everyone's head is just work hard, right? And look, that's not wrong. The evidence for hard work is, well, it's about as solid as it gets. But it's not the whole story. Not even close. The real path to doing great work is a lot more subtle and honestly way more interesting than that. The whole journey starts with one single, absolutely critical decision: figuring out what to work on in the first place. I mean, if you get this part right, everything else has a chance to fall into place. But if you get it wrong, all of the hard work in the world might not make a difference. So what's the actual recipe here? It really comes down to these 4 steps. First, you choose a field that pulls you in. Second, you learn everything you can until you get to the very edge, the frontier of that field. Third, you start to notice the gaps, the things nobody's talking about. And fourth, you explore the ones that seem promising. Let's break that down.
So what guides you in that first all-important step? The answer is something called excited curiosity. And this isn't just, a casual interest. It's everything. It's the engine that pushes you forward, and it's the rudder that steers you. It literally shows you what you should be working on. So here's the question you really need to ask yourself. What are you ridiculously, obsessively curious about? I mean, something you could talk about for hours, to the point where it would probably bore most other people to tears. That right there is your signal. That's your starting point. And as you follow that curiosity, there's a really simple rule to follow. Make the thing you want to see in the world. Write the story you desperately want to read. Build the tool you wish you had. The second you start trying to guess what some imaginary, sophisticated audience wants, that's when you get lost. Your own genuine interest is the only compass that works. All right, so once you've picked a path, one that's genuinely driven by your own curiosity, the next job is to actually walk it. And that means learning. You have to learn and learn and learn until you arrive at the very edge of what is currently known in your field. The frontier of knowledge is kind of like a coastline on a map. From a distance, it looks like a nice, smooth line. But the closer you get, you realize it's actually this incredibly jagged, complex thing, full of little gaps and inlets and uncharted territory. And that is where all the exciting stuff happens. But just getting to that frontier isn't enough. The next step is a skill all on its own. It's about learning to actually see the gaps, the ones that almost everyone else has been trained to just ignore or look right past. I love this way of thinking about it. A big discovery doesn't always come from some huge, dramatic lightning bolt of inspiration. A lot of the time, it starts the exact same way a good stand-up bit does, with someone just saying, "Hey, did you ever notice that?" It's all about spotting something that's a little bit off and having the guts to ask why. This means you have to get in the habit of challenging the things everyone assumes are true. Just ask yourself, what does everybody in my field just take for granted? What's the one thing that no one ever questions? Well, you should start questioning it. That's where new ideas are hiding in plain sight. So, you've spotted one of those gaps. Now you're at the final step of the framework. And honestly, this is where a ton of courage comes in. It's time to actually explore the ideas that live in those gaps. The ones that seem a little weird or overlooked or maybe even completely unfashionable. So how can you tell if an idea is the right kind of crazy? There's actually a pretty simple gut check you can use. Does the idea feel exciting? Does it feel like it's full of interesting new possibilities? Or does it just feel kind of depressing and bad? You gotta trust that feeling. It's a surprisingly powerful guide. Now, here's a paradox you just have to get comfortable with. A truly good, new idea pretty much has to seem like a bad idea to most people. Think about it. If it seemed obviously good, somebody would have already done it. So if you're working on something and people say, "That's crazy," don't get discouraged. That might actually be a very, very good sign. Okay, so that's the 4-step map. But what's the engine that actually powers you through that whole journey? What keeps you going when it gets tough? Well, it all comes down to a handful of really foundational habits and mindsets. First and foremost, you have to protect your morale. This isn't some soft, fuzzy, nice-to-have thing. It is the single most important resource you have. High morale makes everything feel possible. But when it collapses, all the work just stops. You have to treat your morale like a living thing that you have to actively take care of. So how do you do that? The advice here is super practical. First, take care of your body. Exercise is huge, especially walking. It's amazing for thinking. And of course, eating and sleeping well. That's non-negotiable. Then there's the social side. Go out of your way to find colleagues who actually increase your energy instead of draining it. And maybe most importantly, work with people you admire and want to be like, because you will soak up their habits. Another key trait is something called earnestness, which is really just a fancy word for being intellectually honest. It's being willing to say, I was wrong, and not feel bad about it. This isn't about being virtuous. It's a real source of power. It lets you see the truth when other people are blinded by their own ego. And finally, never, ever underestimate the power of just being consistent. It is so easy to overestimate what you can do in a single day, and just as easy to underestimate what you can accomplish in a year of small, steady steps. Writing 1 page a day doesn't feel like much, but at the end of the year, you've got a whole book. It's the engine behind every great achievement. If you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. The world is not a finished project. The map is not fully drawn. The most incredible discoveries, the most profound ideas, they're all still out there just waiting for someone to find them. There is a path. It isn't easy, for sure, but it is knowable. The discoveries are out there, waiting to be made. The only question left is why not by you?